The Tesla onslaught in China with Chinese-made vehicles starts on the 30th of December, with the first 15 vehicles being distributed first to employees. We also have our health tips and also latest news on what's going on with Tesla. This is Greg for Teslafaninsight. Thanks once again for joining us. As you can see, we're at the Tesla facility here in Tyson's Corner or McLean, Virginia. As you'll notice, right next to Tesla is Audi. And while it's a great location for access to all things auto, it can also be a bad location when it comes to traffic for us. But more importantly, it's a very small space for Tesla to operate in. And so we decided to come out today. One, it's great to have good weather, but two, a number of you have decided to help us out with our holiday food giving to our Tesla friends and employees, because they're working really hard to push the numbers at the end of the quarter. So as you can see, we have a number of goodies to drop off to the service staff here, and I wanted to show you that because once we finish the show, I'll walk across the street and deliver it to the manager of the store so the employees can have some refreshments on Teslafaninsight and particularly on you. So if you haven't chipped in at all, we could use $1 or $2. If you look at the bottom, admin at fcttexas.com is our PayPal, and we'll correct that so you'll be able to chip in if you'd like. And the staff would definitely appreciate it. They're underpaid and overworked, but we appreciate the work they're doing. So the first part of the show today is to confirm that Tesla has finally made an announcement on sales. At this point, the vehicles being delivered to employees are actually sales to employees rather than gifts or anything of that sort. So this is actually kind of good news. All of the official information on when the sales in China would start had suggested the end of January would be the day. And we're pleased to see that they're sort of getting started. There's a whole bunch of speculation going as to will they be able to sell a lot of cars. They basically got 29 facilities open now. They're supposed to have 49 open fairly soon. And the question is, how many vehicles are they going to be able to sell in a time frame, and therefore potentially add strong numbers. At our facility here, the delivery run that we've been told is about 123 vehicles a day. So if you want to guess at what the within this quarter numbers might be if Tesla chose to go for it on the 30th and 31st, we're thinking maybe 125 vehicles times 2 days times 29 locations in general might be a number that you could expect to be sold if they kind of pushed it at the pace that they do at this facility. So that might give you some idea. Hopefully the number's higher. I mean, they had enough sales staff and help from current owners. That number could be double. We just don't know, but we will know by the end of the next week once Tesla announces officially what those numbers were. There are a couple of other small news items that one might want to be aware of. Number one is that the stock price of Tesla is officially over $430. It was up as much as $5 pre-market, and it's up $2 right last time I checked an hour ago. So this is still a good circumstance. We're expecting it to sort of pull back, and then once we have the numbers from the quarter, that's when we're expecting it to push forward. So and then, you know, finally on the news front, we're sort of reviewing all the details of financing are kind of interesting. Number one, we kept seeing all these numbers. There's 1.4 billion raised by Tesla. There's also another comment that said, oh no, they raised 1.6 billion as part of the deal with the Chinese banks, and it was kind of going back and forth. So we reread it maybe 5 or 6 times, and what we came up with was that the total amount raised from the Chinese banks was actually $1.6 billion. of that 1.6 billion, it kind of broke down that just under 1.4. They have a $326 million revolving line of credit that's part of that. So if you deduct that, that kind of tells you you're around 1.3 billion or 1.25 billion is the actual amount of money that we're talking about. So what Tesla did with those funds is 500,000 went to cover a bridge loan that they had gotten in actuality to buy the land. That loan is secured by the factory in China and doesn't have recurrence into the United States. So it's still a great loan because having it against the factory is excellent. The other thing is that the revolving line of credit also gives them more flexibility to execute. There are a number of things that have to get done, and all those items include, more charging facilities, at least 20 more service centers, and so there's a number of items that need to be knocked out, and all that capital is going to help in that process. So I think it's great that that's being completed. So the issue that's lurking on the table right now, there are a few giant gorillas, and that is what's the production rate currently of the factory. They're actually having a job fair starting today through Sunday for new employees in the production facility in China, and we're going to get more details on what current staff is. We've actually read that Tesla's actually doing around-the-clock production currently in China at the Shanghai factory, and we haven't had any confirmation from Tesla on that, but you can see at least one shift work of production going out into the lot on a daily basis with the overhead images that we've seen. But the way things work in Fremont is that they actually produce vehicles. Those vehicles are taken away by trucks. You have an empty lot, and then you get another filled up lot, and then that is cleared. So it's our assessment that this is definitely possible, and in theory, if you're doing 300 per shift and you have, let's say, 3 shifts of 8 hours, in theory, that kind of gives you a feel for the general numbers you might have coming out of the factory. But there's all these question marks. How many battery packs do they have? Therefore, how many vehicles can they produce from that? There's, a lot of questions that are going to be answered by next week, and all those questions are going to impact what happens to Tesla's stock price, et cetera, in the short and long term. Now, what do we got going on here? So, as you can see, we have some cars moving behind us that are not Teslas. So one of the things I wanted you guys to note is that as you see vehicles rolling by, there's a large number of vehicles that are being produced and delivered here. The process for the East Coast production facilities is to have cars produced in Fremont, put on a train to Birmingham, Alabama, and then they're trucked here. This contrasts with competing entities that actually produce at the factory, ship by train all the way to, let's say, Baltimore, and then they're trucked. So Tesla's goal is to minimize the cost across the country, as well as once those vehicles make it across the country, they might sit in the rail yard for as much as a week or two before they actually are sold. Here, we'd have to say that that's not the case here in Tyson's Corner in Virginia, and that's because Tesla is really trying to do the just-in-time inventory routine. So, the primary thing we wanted to cover is, the Tesla onslaught is now happening in China. One of the most amazing pieces of data, and we're going to change our orientation from just looking at the front of Tesla, so you can actually see the Audi facility next door. And the reason is that one of the biggest entities to get hit by the inflow of vehicles from Tesla in China is all the major makes from Europe that benefit from the high end. We have a nice red one coming behind us here. I don't know, it's an interesting move to have all this traffic, so I apologize for that. So one of the interesting aspects of China is that this might be the beginning of the bankruptcy process that we talked about for many of the major makes from Europe. And what that is that they, the major makes from Europe are having a problem, and that is that they benefit from what's been a fairly clubby, owned by Europe environment, by the big three, where they're delivering a lot of high-end vehicles to China. And now Tesla is starting to elbow its way into that marketplace already at the very high end, but now it's sort of reaching down into the mid-market. And again, the only data we have to hint at what the numbers were for the pre-orders for these vehicles was the fact that for 3 days the servers of Tesla could not keep up with the demand that was there for those putting in deposits to get a hold of the threes that were being produced in China. So we're actually looking forward to some very big things with the start of this onslaught. You know, there's all these mysteries typically that we can't say we have the answer for, but you can guess. And one of the biggest ones is, why are they waiting till Monday, want to start the deliveries today? That way they could sell a number of cars, by the start of by the end of the new year, if they aren't already doing so. We just don't know what the answer to that is. Just wanted to quickly sidebar note that we appreciate all of you saying hello, and we'll definitely respond to you at the end. And it is always nice to sort of get that family effect feeling going. I wanted to suggest that we're already starting to see the hit on the stock prices of the big three from Germany, and even a little bit the US, relative to the arrival of Model 3s in markets that have previously been completely owned by Tesla competitors. So it's kind of strange because, there's a car coming behind me here, as you can see. I keep seeing a shadow of the car, but the car doesn't come. So it's fun to see what's behind us here and get a chance to see some various Tesla vehicles moving out and through the parking lot. So that's kind of cool. I'm kind of intrigued here because what we're expecting when it comes to the China situation is that we're going to have an initial, push of cars that are coming out, and then hopefully we're going to find out how many vehicles have been sort of put on order by all the folks in China. And then after we know what that number is, I think that all the analysts and ourselves can start to do all the calculations to try to figure out what the revenue impact is going to be, and therefore what the stock impact is going to be. But we'd have to say that the 5,000 Model 3s on the high end that were sold in or registered in November in China is a pretty impressive start. And so we're really looking forward to more hard data that we can present and then spin story off of that, rather than sort of be in a total speculation zone. So I did a quick review of what we have here at our service facility today. As usual, at this time of month, we are stacked up with cars. Interestingly, the new Model 3 population is actually existence. It's 3 or 4 times to 1 relative to S and X. But what we also noticed is there's a lot of, particularly Model S's in the service facility to my left of the building. And as we head over to drop off our goodies, we'll give you an external sort of walk by of what we see here at our service facilities. And remember, we called it parking lot pimping originally, and one of our viewers suggested parking lot review, and I'm fine with that. And if you have any suggestions of what we might call our visit to our service facility, we'd be happy to modify our name for it to that. It is a good opportunity to kind of get a gut feel for, how are the numbers doing, and what do they look like. There's approximately 130 cars, 140 cars on the ground right now. 40 or 50 of those are actually service vehicles. 70% of those are actually Model S, and with a few X's mixed in and a few Model 3s. We also have new vehicles. You'll notice as we go by it, on this side of the building, or my right, you'll notice we still have vehicles sitting outside the building, so we're still getting inventory in. The process at this facility is to turn cars very quickly because it's an extremely small facility. The Audi facility next door is approximately 5 times the size, but from what we can see, they have a lot of vehicles sitting on the ground for long periods of time. So the just-in-time ordering, semi-ordering process that Tesla has going is actually working well to move product quickly. So we think that's pretty awesome. So without further ado, I mean, at this point, we're at about 15 minutes. We're happy to respond to questions they might have. In the interim, I wanted to say hello. Wow, it's great to see people from, Tag from London. It's great to see folks from all over the United States visiting with us. I hope your holidays were happy. You got to eat a lot. I also wanted to note that if you can, at your service facility, you may want to stop by and drop by some goodies because those folks could really use some assistance when it comes to, for example, at the end of the month, helping new owners with their orientation to their vehicles would be helpful. And there's other ways that we can all chip in to help the dream of Tesla really get out there and be successful. So what I'm going to do right now is two things. One, I'm going to what are the service rates and CAM service interval? Great question. I can't say I know what that is, but as I shared, what we're going to do right now is probably stand up. I'm going to give you a visual tour of the facility here, and then we'll probably end up signing off because the way the process works here, or sort of the deal we have, is that speaking to the press without permission could be bad for your job health at Tesla. So you'll notice that we'll probably give you a quick visual tour, and then we'll, I think what I'll do is sign off here, give you the tour, and then we'll shut down as we enter the doors so we can hand off our goodies and make a run out. And again, wanted to thank all of you who chipped in a couple of dollars or more than that so that we can make this effort. What I'm thinking about is because we had one person who chipped in, I think 15 or 20 bucks, this allows us to probably hit another service facility, so we might be able to get a double dip in terms of the amount of information that you're able to gather on a view. So it might get a little rocky right now, but I think it's worth it in terms of at least getting a feel for how the environment looks, how many vehicles you might see out there, types of vehicles, colors chosen by owners, etc. So we're going to get to work on that right now. Before we end, just a note, don't forget 15 leg lifts on each leg. Make sure you don't go to bed within 4 hours of eating, at best case, at a minimum 2, so the food can digest. Number 3, consider the 5-2 or any other fasting diet as a health maintenance, mental maintenance process. At any rate, let's roll across the street and get a peek at what's going on here. It says, "Run, Greg, run." That's funny. 12K miles per day, perhaps a 1,000,000-mile battery available to robo-taxi companies at additional cost. Okay, so let's do this. Okie doke, you can see our service vehicles here with the red tags hanging down, and that's what the lot looks like from here. So we're going to shut down now and then head in and drop off our goodies and roll out. Thank you all for joining us. Have a great day.